Good evening out there. Thank you very much. Welcome to the February 4th, 2019 meeting of the Shawnee Planning Commission. We'll start with roll call. Commissioner Montgomery is absent. Commissioner Roth? Commissioner Peterson?
Here.
Commissioner Willoughby?
Here.
Commissioner Beanhoff?
Here.
Commissioner Busby is here. Commissioner Wise?
Here.
Commissioner Braley?
Here.
Commissioner Les Smith? Commissioner Mudgett is absent. Commissioner John Smith?
Here.
Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. The consent agenda, item 1 is listed under the consent items agenda. Unless there's a request to remove this item from the consent agenda, the item will be approved in one motion. Is there a request to remove the item from the consent agenda? If not, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Chairman?
Commissioner Braley,
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the consent agenda items, including staff's recommendations.
thank you. Is there a second? Commissioner Beanhoff,
Second.
is there a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Thank you. Under new business, we have a remand of the PUD 0418-11 rezoning from commercial highway to planned unit development mixed use and preliminary development plan approval for the construction of a mixed use project located in the 16,100 to 16,300 blocks of West 66th Terrace. Doug?
Good evening, Doug Allman, Community Development staff. This item, as you remember, was held at a public hearing December 17th, 2018. This body recommended approval to the City Council for the plan that is in front of you. If you recall, that plan, there was a wing extension on this end of the property, and it was in very close proximity to a house. It was in this area. The item was forwarded on to City Council January 14th, and in between the time when you made your recommendation and that council hearing was held, the work of the neighbors and City Council, a few ward members and staff and the applicant, there was an alternative footprint proposed by the adjacent neighbors. Basically, they took a Photoshop of the original drawing and altered it to come up with what was called, I think, Unit Move Proposal 2, which is depicted right here. And so with that information, the applicant went back to the drawing board and essentially revised their footprint, the footprint of their proposal to mimic that. And what that did is it increased the setback from this property line and certainly increased the distance between the Keaton property that's to the south and to the west. And generally when that happens at the council level of a major plan revision, like a footprint change happens, the process is that's remanded back to you for review. It doesn't mean that you have to accept it, but what they essentially wanted you to look at was this footprint, making sure so. That's essentially our presentation. Pretty simple. This is not a public hearing item, but if you want to entertain comments from the public, if anybody has anything that they want to say, you're certainly welcome to do that.
And I assume since it's remanded back from the city council that the applicant does not need to come forward and speak on this matter either?
Not necessary. This is just a simple review of that one item that they asked you to look at.
Does the committee have any questions for the staff on this item? Commissioner Braley?
Yes. Question for staff. As I had brought this up when we were talking about last time. The immediate response was, well, we wouldn't have enough parking or it takes parking away. Are we still in compliance with the amount of spots by moving this?
Actually, they were very efficient in making this work. I think the report states, I think they lost about 20 on-site spaces, but they still have enough reciprocal parking, shared parking, to be in compliance. So the answer to the question is that they did lose a little bit of parking, but we're comfortable with the fact that there's shared parking and connectivity across the street, especially the fact that they lost that pad site to the east. Those units on that side will be able to be cross-parked with that, what was originally a standalone pad site that's all parking now. And obviously, I think the staff report alludes to that as well, is that this has to come back for a final plan. And so we'll look at that in detail at the final plan level.
Okay. And so my follow-up question then, because we're dealing with this as two separate projects, the mixed use and then what's going to be across the street in retail, will the final plans that come to us address the entire development or just this component?
The final plan will be for the PUD, the Lot 2 portion. The site plan on the north side, the zone commercial highway, is fully approved. Unless they make major changes, they'll have to come back. But we'll obviously talk about it in the context of the overall development.
Okay. Because I'll tell you where I'm going to go with this when we get to the final plan, so you can maybe consider that, is if we're going to be having shared parking across that street, which 3 lanes, how well we effectively use any kind of traffic calming for that pedestrian access to their residence so that it's not sort of a bad experience for them.
And this drawing, as you said, is just Lot 2, but my recollection and thought is that there will actually be crosswalks provided in this scenario. And I believe because of grade changes, there were not only crosswalks, but there was some thought given to the grading of getting people up from the street, the sidewalk level, to that parking lot. I think there's a couple of stairwells that are required even. So we'll look at ADA, we'll look at all of that in the context of the entire development.
Okay, great, thank you.
Commissioner Peterson?
On this parking thing, and sorry, I cannot remember the specifics from the staff report. I did read it. But the parking, even with what they are considering the double parking for the units, there's not enough if there are for the apartments, or is there?
There's 232 spaces provided. This
And
is
how many units now?
249. It's exactly the same as original. The context of it is that a lot of these, if you recall, are 1-bedroom units and even studio-type apartments. Our parking requirement just across the board is 2 cars per dwelling unit.
Right.
And that's excessive in our mind for a 40 or a 400 square foot studio-type unit. So what we allowed them to do is a blended parking count. And what we did is take into account the over-parking that's on the north side, making sure that connectivity is there, and then taking into account that parking that's to the east. In staff's opinion, the facility is parked adequately for a mix of units of this type.
Thanks.
Does the commission have any other questions for staff? If not, I'd say we'd be in commission discussion. Commissioner Peterson?
First of all, I really like this plan. It would have been nice if this would have been in front of us before, but we don't get to pick and choose. And one of the reasons why I particularly like being on the planning commission is sometimes my job is very black and white. Does it fit? Is it what we're looking to do? And the original plan checked all the boxes. I'm thrilled that everybody got together and made some compromises, and I think this is going to be a better plan that fits everybody, and hopefully that everybody stays on track so when the finals come back to us, we don't have to do this again. But I'm saying that I'm glad that they looked at this one more time and tried to do something, but I don't regret voting for it in the first place.
Commissioner Les Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Doug, just for the record, neighborhood can live with this plan, correct? Okay.
It's my understanding that they are comfortable with the layout that mimics what they had proposed. As I said, it's not a public hearing, but I think there's members here, if they want to say something, they're more than welcome. But I can't speak for them, but I think in truth, we came to an agreement that everybody could live with.
Okay. My only comment is that I think some of us bought into the notion that the only thing that was going to work for those people was nothing. And, I'm not too old to learn life lessons, and perhaps we didn't give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm also big enough to sit up here and say that I was wrong, and I'm glad that everyone involved was able to come up with something that can make it more palatable to the neighborhood. So.
Thank you. Put me in the category as wrong on that too. But the one thing I'm glad of is that our system works to where now it was able to be changed, where more people are comfortable with it, and I have no issue with this change at all. Commission discussion continues. And if there's no more discussion, then you want us just to a vote to accept the changes as proposed by the developer and the
A motion and a second to remand it back to council with the revised footprint as exhibited in the staff report.
and as per the instructions from city council.
Correct.
Very good. I almost made that motion, but since I can't make the motion, would someone else care to?
Mr. Chairman, sure.
Commissioner Les Smith.
Thank you very much. In the matter of PUD 041811 Belmont Promenade, I move that the Planning Commission amends our recommendation to the City Council to accept the revised building footprint that is proposed to us this evening.
Thank you. Is there a second? Commissioner John Smith. Thank you, John Smith. There's a motion to remand back to the City Council the revision of PUD 0418-11 as per the changes. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Thank you. Going on to, now we're into other business. Does the staff have any business for the commissioners?
We have no other business tonight. I think I've mentioned that our new deputy director will be starting work the 11th, and so I'll introduce her to you guys at the next planning commission meeting. Third will be the Wednesday because of the holiday of this month.
Perfect. Do the commissioners have anything for staff? If not, is there a motion for adjournment? Commissioner Peterson,
I move we adjourn.
is there a second? Commissioner Wise,
Second the motion.
there's a motion to second to adjourn. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. We're done. Thank you. And thank you all for being here this evening.